With the Open Government team, we are going to prove you that, first of all, the presumption of innocence should be kept in any way, and secondly, we are going to show you how this motion is going to affect broad groups of women, not only sexually offended ones, but those who haven't been harassed before, which is really not likely, because many women are being offended. So let's do a bit of framing for the Open Government team. We believe that media today has a lot of political capital. We do not believe in a fully unbiased media, because what is a form of political capital? It is the subscribes that you give to this media, it is the likes that you put them on their Instagram pages and so on. And also, we believe that because this topic is very dubious, like sexual offense is not really a thing on which we all commonly agree. So this is a very polarized topic where we have strong oppositions fighting over the rights of women, body, and whether reputation is more important here. So we believe such topics are very profitable also for the media, because they cause a lot of hateful comments, a lot of not only discussions but also a lot of not necessarily consistent comments and so on. So this also kind of raises the views and kind of brings money to this media. So we believe that this media also take on this topic a lot. So, and secondly, another framing is that mostly, not simple cases are being published, but mostly cases with famous people who have a lot of reputation at stake, for which many people will be, it's very spectacular, and who would be likely to put on the TV and watch this fully and give the media more views. So, first of all, on the presumption of innocence. We believe that if one person is accused, he is not supposed to prove that he is not guilty. It is the others who must find some kind of evidence that he is guilty. And who believes that liberal media tries to adjust to its audience, and it tries to kind of use some kind of tools. What kind of tools actually media use? Because they want to adjust to their public, liberal media would, for example, try and take the face of Bill Clinton, let's say, and show his face as very suspicious and not honest and so on. But conservative media will show the victim side as very not trustful, and they will put her face as a very kind of not to be trusted and so on. So there are many also language tools, like more harsh language at some points and more weak language at some points. So we believe this really affects our minds, because even if we believe that the article is unbiased, we still take some side unconsciously. And so how it's going to affect women? We believe that for women who are going currently through this kind of trial, courage is very important, because they probably have put a lot in this trial, because they have taken a lot of advocates, probably it's a lot of money because another person is very famous, like the guy from House of Cards and so on. Probably it's a lot of courage because your face is going to be shown by many platforms and taken to memes and so on. So you probably feel very, very vulnerable at this point. So this brings unnecessary harm to people who are going through the trial process. How it's going to be so? Because there is a lot of support from the conservative media and from the fans of these people who are being accused. So we see that these fans, they try to persuade other women that, for example, reputation is much more valuable and sex is just a pleasant kind of pleasant part of your life. So nothing wrong has happened, and it was actually just an accident, and people just do sex and so on. So they do not consider these problems really important. So they try to kind of devaluate the value of the problem of this woman, and they try to even threaten her, because, for example, for them, the president's impeachment is much more important than, for example, one woman being touched by him and so on. And for example, for them, viewing their favorite actor, which they really adore, which play they enjoy, or the artist whose picture they enjoy, is much more valuable than the life of this woman. And so we believe that these women feel even more vulnerable. But moreover, how it affects other women, we believe that even women who haven't been harassed, they still face a lot of not really pleasant feelings inside, and also women who have been probably harassed by other famous people, but they see what are the results of this publicity. So they are afraid to move on, because we see that in Diana Shurigina's case, for example, her mother was beaten after the interview, so they feel really vulnerable in this case, where they see a lot of hatred against them. We see that people are being really devoted to protecting potential offenders, and we see that these fans, for example, they want to try to find your address, want to search a lot of information about you. They will give links to your social page and say, like, let's write her hateful comments. This is not the case which I want to face. Yes.
So those people will still know that this trial is going on. What's going to stop them from doing all of those things that you're talking about?
Okay, we believe that they do not know that the trials happen. They are faced with the results directly. And what is good about this is that probably in liberal countries you have a lot of trust in the judges. You have a lot of consensus that judges are doing the right thing in comparison to Kaizen, for example, where we believe that judges are biased and somehow can be bought, you know. So in this case there will be more clarity. And so going on, so the very pressure. For example, as a woman, I still read this conservative media. I still hear the opinion of my friends, and for example, I go to school and I see my teachers discussing this topic because it's very, very on fire, you know, and the very sexuality is being insulted. And so the women start to blame themselves, and they say, okay, maybe if I go to this trial, I will disappoint the fans. Probably the reputation is much more important. Probably that the fact that this person will probably lose his job is much more important. So they are not going to report. And that's how less women are reporting and so on. And we believe that sometimes cases of women who are being publicly shown also fail, because they might fail to gather enough evidence. This is very likely to happen because the crime might have happened like 10 years ago and now she cannot do anything. Or she just has less money to look persuasively and hire better advocates and so on. So in this case, when the woman fails, there is even more hatred and much more rage among the conservative people, because they think that she has done irreversible harm to the person who is being accused. So this irreversible harm is much more important for them. And sometimes, in fact, people might be accused not truly, right? Like not based on facts, you know. But these cases are going to be very hyped, and they will hurt a lot of women beyond this topic, not only those who have already been on this trial.
I thank the Prime Minister for his fine speech, and I would like to invite the leader of opposition here.
Honorable Speaker, in this speech I'm going to be talking about two things. First of all, I'm going to talk about how the fact that we apply this motion creates a power imbalance during the trial, and the victims are less likely to get fair adjudication. Second of all, I'm going to be talking about how this absence of this motion changes the calculus of harassers and abusers, and why it's important for us to preserve the status quo, even if we have some false convictions, even in the best case of the government side. But for that, let's put a little bit of frame. So, opening government agrees that if trial is media reportable, we're talking about a famous person, but most likely this person is not only famous, right? They're probably extremely wealthy. They have a lot of power, right? We're talking about people like Harvey Weinstein, maybe like Epstein, like Prince Andrew, maybe sometime in the future. A lot of people that have a lot of media influence, political influence, and a lot of money, right? Second of all, you must understand that trials do not start out of thin air, right? There might be allegations, there might be pre-trial deliberations, etc. But if case goes to trial, there must be probably one out of a few conditions happening, right? You either should have a lot of different people having those allegations on them, or maybe you should have some hard evidence, right, that warrants a trial, or you should have some kind of confessions from that person who this trial is opening up against, right? It's open in the media, or maybe some kind of privately disclosed ones that have been recorded or something. All those kind of things are prerequisites before this thing starts. So most of my refutation will be integrated in my case, so let's firstly just go instantly into the argumentation. So on the first thing, we believe that on the power imbalance. So we believe that usually the person that goes on trials has a lot of tools in their disposal if they're rich, wealthy, and powerful, right? They're likely to, first of all, have the best lawyers, right? So people who have a real experience of defending sex offenders, who have a ton of ability to curse both the jury and the adjudicators, who have a lot of influence inside of the judicial circles, etc. Second of all, they have the ability to bribe or otherwise suggest favors to adjudicators, again to those people who are in the jury, a lot of discursive power over them. Third of all, they have just in general perceived power. Even trained adjudicators are susceptible to things that can ruin their career, as some people with some political influence, for example, may have, right? For example, when you have Trump, for example, declaring that some kind of a decision is wrong because the person under this trial is a friend or is friend of Trump, and therefore their sentence is getting lower. A lot of those people that those accusations come about, they do have this kind of political power, and it's likely that they can employ it in case they do not have enough accountability. So why is that important, Honorable Speaker? We believe that behind closed doors, there are very little opportunities for us to have real accountability, and there are very many opportunities for those rich people to obstruct justice fairly easily. And we see that systematically happening in judicial systems, even in liberal democracies, right? So people as Woody Allen or maybe Roman Polanski have casually escaped the trials that have been opened against them just by the means of their influence and of their power, right? Why is that important? Is because the media they also have the ability to put up pressure on the victims, right? They showcase how much money do they have, how great of a lawyer they have, all of those things, and they silence them by doing this, because this victim cannot by this motion speak out about whatever is happening, and they tell them that you're just going to get out of this trial with nothing. It's better for you to settle with me, to get an NDA, and we're just going to go fine and to go on with our life, which means that justice never really got served. And this is why, for example, Mr. Bloomberg gets so much NDAs, for example, in the status quo before Me Too and before media ever reported on the fact that there were trials about his, for example, sexual behavior, etc., right? Because they have this power to silence people. So what media attention does specifically? Media attention allows, first of all, victim to see the support and not to step down from their position. Because we believe that social media can be a cesspool of disrespectful comments for sure, right? But the point of this is because people are not educated about sexual harassment. It's a new topic. Me Too movement is pretty young, and therefore people do not know how to respond to those cases properly. Media attention is necessary because most of the media heads, most of the people in Hollywood and etc., they do at least publicly uphold an agenda of being a liberal person, a leftist person, and therefore most of major media, such as Washington Post, such as New York Times, etc., they do release opinion pieces and articles on the fact why the victim is in the right? Why sexual harassment is impossible. They do directly educate people by doing that, and therefore they reduce the pressure on those victims that would be unrestricted in the other case. Even such places as Fox News, they have a hard time defending sex offenders when they're before court, because they do have to uphold the fact that the courts are very good, because it's part of the conservative agenda, because of the fact that they have to uphold the fact that pedophilia, for example, is an awful crime because it goes directly against the main beliefs of what they're talking about. We believe that even conservative media, even if it doesn't have this universal support of those sexual victim cases, it does not go against them as much as those who support it, right? Why? It basically ensures that the victim knows that there is some support and ensures that it gets more support. But second of all, and more importantly, it allows us to ensure the fairness of trial, right? We have many new instruments to do that. We have cameras inside of court, right, which do not allow for lawyers to make unfair arguments without being picked apart. It does not allow some kind of pressuring interrogations to happen. All of those things get instantly reported. Second of all, we can get reports on the daily from lawyers, participants of the trial, etc. We can be kept up with the situation and find out if any abuses are happening inside of court by far more reliably, right? It keeps the adjudicators in line and unlikely to kowtow to the pressure that's happening. But then, what's the second thing? We believe that it also changes the calculus that harassers have, right? How does it happen? Well, we believe that abuse generally stems from power disbalance, right? You have power over someone else, and therefore you do not fear to abuse them because you believe that you can get away with that. It's also extremely unlikely for a trial to come out of nowhere because of reasons that I explained before, right? So it's very, very much less likely that those things occur if you're likely to lose something in any case, right? We believe that trials in general oftentimes don't go anywhere because it's very hard for you to prove the allegations of sexual abuse, right? Because there's usually the evidence have been lost a long time ago. Usually you don't have that much things that hold up in court to hold up against, even if you have 50 people who accuse someone, which is probably a pretty reliable indicator that this person is guilty of at least something, right? We believe that those trials can be pretty shaky. What is not shaky, however, is the media pressure that's being put on that person, which is likely to lose that person their jobs in, for example, media, to lose them their influence, all of those things that they have built up for such a long time. And we believe that this is the only mechanism how we can reliably punish those people. And we believe that we're susceptible to losing that attention because of the fact that, you know, if we do not have this attention during the trial, we just get one news that someone has been convicted or someone has not been convicted, which does not register with people as much as this empathy-inducing reporting that can happen through months and months. And later on going to explain why this mechanism is unique and more important, but for now, yeah, that's it.
Now I'd like to invite the Prime Minister here.
Opening opposition created a framing where even media support cannot help the victim. In our case, we will show that it is probably it's not so important to have media support to win this case. Moreover, we see that media support is never a case because on our side of the house you also have opportunities to come, for example, to NGOs to ask for support from feminist organizations and organizations that help you to fight with this abuser. And on our side of the house, you still, as a victim, have this alternative, and we don't see how like all of the people in your country knowing about this abuse is helping you to your trial, because on their side of the house, this person, the abuser, still have a lot of power, still have best lawyers, and still have a lot of public support and stuff like that. We believe deterrence, if closing opposition will speak about deterrence, never work, because in cancel culture, you as a public figure, your publicity and your reputation brings you a lot of money, and those people, they will do everything they can to save this reputation. As an abuser, I will abuse and scare women even more, and and will try to use every way to prevent them from reporting. I will force them to write non-disclosure agreement because one, I have power, I have money, I have fame and reputation, and I will scare her that no one will believe her. And on their side of the house,
even if some will refuse to abuse in the first place because of the cancel culture, for other victims the abuse and harassing will become even more severe. They will live with this like for a longer time, and they will never be able to, for example, to go to the trial, to go to the judges and say that she was harassed and stuff like that, and then it even becomes even more harder for those women, and those women become more vulnerable. We believe that media outlets spread this topic and they capitalize this topic very much because it gives you a lot of shares, a lot of views, and more money from ads and stuff like that. You are reporting even more about this trial, and you create more pain for the victims. On your side of the house, women suffer, and because moreover, I am suffering because all of those people that actually support the abuser, they are starting to oppose me. They are starting because I'm as a fan of the abuser. I see how my role model, how my best person that I believe in is being wrongfully quote unquote convicted, and I start to oppose. I don't trust liberal media, and I believe that victim is like lying and stuff like that. Because in those media probably they don't have like direct evidence being presented. It's not persuasive enough for me, and I start to harass victims. Even if the evidence is persuasive enough, I start to victim blame. I say that she is wrong, and and she is the reason why harassment happened and stuff like that. So me as a victim, many victims, I am suffering with this like for a long period of my life, and I may drop the whole trial because I'm emotionally suffering on this, because I have because I'm emotionally suffering, and a lot of this hatred that has been directed toward me, and I cannot bear that, and because of that I may drop the trial, and I may continue, and this pressure may also be a reason why I can settle with the abuser, and why I can stop the investigation and then go on trial. This is bad because I will have to continue with to live with the thought that this abuser never convicted, that this abuser is never punished, and he is okay, like going somewhere in freedom. Why it is bad? Because victim blaming, when me as a just woman, simple woman, sitting and seeing that this woman, this like famous woman being harassed publicly, being victim blame, I also trigger my emotional connections, my past, for example, harassments and stuff like that, and I also suffer with her, and because I'm closely associated myself with this woman, because my experience is very close to this, because my boss harassed me, because my someone who is in power, also harassed me, and that's why I am very much suffering, and that's why I also see that I don't want this disclosure. I don't want my parents to see that someone harassed me. I don't want my close people, my small circle of friends see and also abusing me, also victim blaming me, also harassing me, and this is stops me from all of this. On our side of the house, we will still get a lot of media attention after the trial, when everything happens. When the person is actually convicted and he has his prison, when he goes to the prison. Why it will be a lot? Because still liberal media will try to get this woman for interview. Because it's also about very big and famous person, and media will be conducting interview, ask her why she were able, how she was so brave to come to the trial and win the case. And on our side of the house, it will be more empowering for women that are in the position of abusing. In the case when they want to report a past abuse and stuff like that, it will be more empowering. But on their side of the house, it is less empowering, because all those women are seeing how this woman is suffering with the case, and it creates a lot of additional burden for the victim. It creates a lot of additional burden to the victim, and helps a lot to the abuser, because a lot of this whole fan base is supporting him. They come to the trials. they harass the woman and they do it and they're actually doing it. On our side of the house, you still have opportunity to address all those NGOs and all those supporting organizations that will help you, but on their side of the house, it will be much harder for me emotionally as a woman, and it will be very it will be harder for me. Also, if in cases where like the allegation were not true, it creates a precedent for even more victim blaming all those vulnerable women that are reporting, and any word from women that are reporting harassment will become like, you are not true, we shouldn't trust you because we saw all those previous actresses that were reporting on this producer and they were not right. You are. And that's why it creates a lot of additional precedents to victim blame, a lot of additional burdens and sufferings for women. Thank you.
I thank the Prime Minister for the speech, and I would like to invite the leader of opposition here.
Okay, in this speech I'm going to continue on with my case. For my second argument, I'm going to explain in detail why we can have pressure on those people and why it's going to be effective. Before that, a few points of refutation to the last speech. So what they're talking about, right? They're talking about this pressure from fans, from etc. groups. Let's understand a little bit of framing, right? First of all, we believe that the fact that results are going to be reported and nothing is going to be told during trial does not mean that people do not know that the trial is going on in general, right? Because first of all, to put up a ban, you should still, announce the fact that there is a trial for media companies to know that there is a ban, and also those people usually, if they disappear from the public sphere, if they seen entering the courtroom because there are paparazzis around that operate in social media that's less regulated, it's likely that this information will slip out. But also we believe that there is also pre-trial deliberation. Most often trials do not happen out of thin air. Usually there are some allegations and people talk about this a little bit and then only this trial is filed. So there is probably an understanding of people that if your favorite actor does not showcase in the new episode of your favorite Netflix drama, there is probably something going on, right? If you put all of those things together, you're going to know this information. Why is that important? Because they're talking about those fans of those abusers and etc. We believe that those fans, knowing the fact that the trial is going on, are still going to be angry because of all those reasons that opening governments bringing about, right? They love the actors, they do not believe that this person could have done something like that, etc. We believe that this thing is happening on both cases initially, right? What's the difference that I'm showcasing to you is the fact that most media, especially in Me Too era, is showing you why exactly those things that this actor undertook are unacceptable, and they're given a lot of explanatory power, as usually those top-tier journalists talking about that are by far more likely to persuade those fans that nothing has been done wrong, than that this abuse has been actually done, than just silence, right? It's by far likely to change the opinions of at least some of those people who also read media, who also read news, understand that, but also we believe that the real evidence that will be seen during the trials that's going to be presented is also by far more likely to change the situation, because it's very hard for you to argue with clear evidence that's open during the trial than with silence, right? Therefore, believes that the pressure is going to be actually by far less, or there's going to be at least by far more positive impacts, because people will actually, some people at least will understand the fact that this trial is justified, and therefore we at least will have a split opinion on that, which is still better than whatever they are talking about, right? Second of all, what they're talking about, cancel culture doesn't work, those people are still powerful, they're going to still win in trials. Please note, they do not actually show logic how they're going to still win in trials just because of those things. they do not directly respond to arguments that we make, but also like comparatively, even at their best, right? Even if the chances are still so thin because of the fact that those people are really powerful, we still on our side have more chances, right? Because of the fact we have more accountability. They never disprove the fact. Why would you have less accountability if we have cameras in court that look at everything that's happening, right? So we believe that this is not really comparative. Last thing that they're talking about is that, oh, I'm going to be afraid to do disclosure now because of the fact that, you know, I can be harassed and all that. We believe that women in the modern world already have this fear of being harassed because they live in a conservative society that tells them victim blaming things all the time, right? Why did she go out in the park at night? It's her own fault that she got raped. All of those narratives are prevalent, right? And because of this fact, these women are already afraid of those things because they hear their fathers, their brothers, and even sometimes in internalized misogyny, their mothers talking about those things, right? It's by far more likely that those people are going to report when they see that there's a lot of trials going on. During those trials, there's clear accountability going on, and there's a lot of chances for you to actually win in this trial because of the fact that there's accountability. And when they're going to see that out of those trials, there is not, as in their case, going to be like maybe 1 out of 10 trials going successful, but maybe at least 4 or 5 out of those trials, which is a significant change in your likelihood to try and seek revenge, right? Not to just waste your resources for nothing, but actually have a chance to get some kind of revenge and send the person to jail and maybe get some financial returns back. We believe it's more likely that women are going to do that, right? So, okay, if we have, okay, sure.
When liberal media always talks about that, it creates a lot of counter-narrative from the fans, from the media that support this actor. That's why actually victims have more pressure on them, not only because fans talk about it.
Thank you, I understand. Look, this counter-pressure is not something that will be created out of nowhere, right? It's not like it's some new thing that will uncover. People already have those opinions in their head. They are going to be only reinforced for some people, but those people already hold them, so nothing really will change for them. Mostly it will still be, the delta will still be that more people are going to shift their opinion in a more liberal way because of all those systematic reasons that I have explained before, okay? So, okay, then on my second argument. So what exactly will happen during those trials? So I believe that people in general are susceptible to, in this case, this motion is going to apply, we're susceptible to lose media attention in a large way. Why? Well, because even if deliberation happened before trial, it is still not as clear if something actually have happened, if it's just rumors, if it's just clear news, etc. So there is not likely that it's going to be a lot of attention-grabbing news and etc. There's not going to be a lot of details flowing in the media, all of things like that. Second of all, the trial is really long, right? And stuff right now in status quo, new stuff flies out all the time, right? Every week you hear some kind of new detail about how Harvey Weinstein have harassed someone else, or like Kevin Spacey harassed someone, etc. The media attention is kept constant, right? And in the end, when this trial ends and it ends only with one conviction, it's only just like one news, etc. It's less likely to attract long-term attention for those people. Why is that important? Because those people are money makers for their companies. Those companies do not really want to dismiss those people because those people are probably big stars and etc. Right? They will try not to do that as long as media attention will be crushing on those people, as long as it's not going to be like constant throughout a long time, so that people are really going to subscribe to this cancel culture with a large probability. So I believe it's more likely that this stuff will happen on our house. Why is that important also? Because honestly, even if some accusations are wrong, and we already showcased why it's unlikely, we cannot demand a 100% right system all the time, right? Even our court system that we depend on so much also has a success rate of maybe like 95%. It has a ton of false convictions like that, but we cannot have a legal system that's going to be ideal. We have to deal, but we still put up a legal system because not having any legal system at all in place is by far worse for us. And I believe that basically if we do introduce this motion, we will not have any real legal system because of the fact that these underlying power disbalances are going to be still perceived in court, like going to still exist in court in a very large way, and basically disrupt the ability of people to have those fair deliberations even if court is officially going to be held. The only way for us to change that is through media attention that will equalize this power of people in the court, and therefore we're very proud to oppose.
Now I'd like to invite a member of the government to open the debate on the second half. Here.
We believe that our aim is to make objective and fair decision of the court, regardless of the discourse, to make this offender punished equally to his or her crime. Why should it be banned? And there is no on the side of the opposition it would not work. We believe that because of the attention that the trial. Because the attention to this trial negatively affect objectivity, firstly, for the jurors, because they are average people, because they are affected by overall environment in the community, in the society, and that is a point why why this trial would not be just, and why this offender will not be fairly punished. Two reasons why it is so. Firstly, juries are pressured from around, from their, for example, relatives, from their colleagues at their works, and etc. So they are pushed to make everything to make this offender highly punished. Because this offender is due to the media highly demonized, because this offender is pictured such as a very bad person who deserves a high extent of punishment and etc. So we believe that exactly this point do not afford us to make a real, just and fair decision. Second point is that the information which is given to the society is not fair because of the media discourse. Why it is so? Because when media start to investigate something, the media tend to make extensive investigation, tend to find all the sources which can give any information. What does it mean? It means that the media would collect some gossips, probably fake some kind of news in order to make their headings louder and louder, to make exactly their news very very attractive to the audience and etc. It means that these jurors are not given to fair information. Even if court does not give that evidences, these jurors have in their minds that this information was in the news, and I tend to believe that because it has a high extent of the discourse and etc. And it is like and this, for example, magazine have a high extent of trust, and I will trust this, and I will use this evidence in my decision when I actually make a decision to punish this offender. We believe that. Yeah.
So media cares a lot about their reputation. Lying one time is a short-term profit, but it's going to destroy your reader base. Rather, we believe they are likely to make good investigational journalism to attract people's attention in order for them to be read more.
If this, we believe that when this the magazine with a high extent of trust will make very hinty, or I don't know, very their life would be of very high quality, because they know that when it is opened, they would not have this trust furthermore. So because of that, they would likely to make this news very to think all of the steps in their lives. It means why it will actually happen, because they need to have loud headings, because all of the magazines, for example, have equal distribution of the audience, but if I will have a louder audience, my magazine would be more popular, my magazine will have more money, more profit from the sales and etc. Another point is that, no thanks. If reporting of the trials is banned, what does actually happen? It means that probably the punishment will be announced afterwards, because that is a famous person, that his life is on everyone's eyes, and it will be published, not published, but not at the time of the trials. Why is this important? Because at the time of the trials, we demonize this person highly. We think that this person doesn't deserve anything in the sense. Why it is principally not fair to him? Because if this person has some kind of famous, if this person has some kind of trust, he actually made some contribution to this community before this crime. Even if this crime was committed, we do not believe that exactly this person should be highly punished, because everyone in this world has equal rights, and we should not prioritize one person over another when we punish, because the law for everyone is equal. We believe that because, as I said before, juries in the court will not be actually fair in this case. We believe that this offender would be unfairly punished. To the point of the opening opposition, when they say that exactly the deals of these famous persons would help us to solve this problem. Actually, it is not so, because in our world, people still will know that the law, there is some kind of law that states that this kind of crime is punished highly, and I will lose everything what I have now because I offend this crime.
I think the member of the government for the speech now would like to invite the member of opposition here.
So the main mistake of opening government is that they never prove why specifically those ongoing trials are unique. That is to say, we say that all those hate comments, all those negative viewpoints about the victims are still going to be present, and they have never proven you why the ongoing trial is so unique in this in these debates. Very quick rebuttal to closing government. So when they say that we shouldn't be demonizing rapists, like we shouldn't be prioritizing one person over the other, we're saying the same thing. We shouldn't be prioritizing one person over another. That is to say, we believe that the victim has an equal right for body integrity, has an equal right to life, and has an equal right to not be raped as this rapist. So that is just, we say that even if demonization is happening, that is fully justified simply because that person exactly did something really, really wrong. Even if there are contributions and etc., they still have to prove why those contributions are more important than the fact that the person actually raped another person and violated their body integrity. They have never proven you that. More importantly, when they say that jurors are given false information and that there are gossips, fake news, and they affect the juries, we believe that whenever you choose jurors, whenever you invite jurors to a court, you actually give them a training. That is you give them those basics of legislatory on how to make decisions in the court. You actually train them for a while, and only then they go to the court. Simply because we should understand that juries should be acquainted with the legal system. So what we're going to talk about is that the awareness and the frequency spread through the media will drastically decrease on their side of the house. Apart from what opening opposition said, we're going to explicitly prove you why the ongoing trials are so unique in this debate. That was partly mentioned by Mukhtar, but we will elaborate on that even more. So the first is, what are ongoing trials? What is the uniqueness of ongoing sex offense trials? So sex offense trials are really complex. That is to say, you can't prove them obviously like this person has raped you, because there are cases that have happened years ago, and that takes a lot of capital to decide whether the victim, whether something that has happened is true or not. They might take like in average 16 to 18 months, or even years, for your trial to make a decision. On their side of the house, you only get a report once when the trial is over, and the decision is in place. So the frequency of such report in an article is only one, or at the best place, a couple of articles or a couple of reports about that sex offense trials. On our side of the house, whenever the trial is going, you produce different media materials on a constant basis. So that is to say, you add new updates, you add new details, new evidence, new victims might add up, and the frequency of presence of material about sexual assaults and harassment always comes up in your feed. That is to say, you always see those kind of things, those kind of articles. It takes a good portion of media to process information about the court, and that is something unique on our side of the house. The moment you actually see that kind of about that court case a lot, you see the details of how that has happened, you get interested, you get triggered. Like, is that true? Or can that happen also to me? Or like, I can be in the same situation that victim is, or like etc. So on their side of the house, on the side of opening government, there is no coverage about those sex offense trials. So when a very famous politician, for instance, Kavana, is being sued, that creates a lot of hype. People instantly get triggered by the question, well, is that true? Or like they get interested, and until the very last moment, you don't know the conclusion of the court. That creates a lot of tensions within the society because it's so scandalous. Scandals and hype can frame your attention a lot. Simply because that even if the victim loses the case, you still have that tension and that hype present because you see so many details, and they're so personal and they're so related to you that you start thinking, I might have been in the same situation as that woman was. And more importantly, even if the case was failed, the company or the individual are still being harmed. Their reputation is still wrecked simply because there was like a long period of possibility that this company or individual has its fault later. So as OJ framed, there is like a huge possibility that the cases about sexual offense will be lost. That is to say, the court, the victim loses their case, and but on their side of the house, they're now portrayed as being too exacerbated. No one pays attention because everyone thinks, well, that must have been obvious. They think that the victim exacerbated the situation, and there's not a lot of coverage of it. However, on our side of the house, whenever you say that a woman was raped in Uber, people
start actually asking questions like, how did that happen? But that might have also happened to me. You always see those details in the articles. You see more articles triggered by that same case court. That is to say, how to prevent yourself, how to have those means of safety and etc. On our side of the house, even if Uber wins the case and says no, there was no woman raped, or even if Kavana wins the case, we still have that hype and interest. We still have that moment of tension when everybody thinks that this case might be true, and that this case might have been, might have been related also to me. On our side of the house, we do have interest. We do have that hype, and therefore we have a far more bigger coverage in terms of media. But also, secondly, we have a deterrence on our side of the house, because even if the victim loses its case, the very fact that you have this case in the court is already a representation of your reputation, and all the companies and all the individuals will try to avoid now that court. By how? They will have extra measures of safety. They will have extra measures of women not being raped in their companies or by their employees. Because why? Because they care about their reputation. Because their reputation gets wrecked the moment they get into the court. We see on our side of the house there's an effective deterrence, mean of deterrence on our side of the house, and also there are a lot of far more coverage in our case, as I have already explained. So, in order to sum up this debate, in order to sum up our case, we believe that yes, the case of OO was pretty good, but we have explained to you the uniqueness of why that information in the media actually matters and why there will be more occurrence of such materials in our case. We have also explained the practical impact about how those victims and how the publicity in general will be affected. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite the opposition lead here.
Let's quickly start from closing argument. So firstly, they say that we lose objectiveness of trials. That's not clear because on their side, you instead having less accountability, because media in the vast majority of instances, it is a sin that holds them accountable, because on the other side, you don't pressure them, etc. And therefore, this point is not that important. But secondly, they say that we have, when you constantly focus on these issues, we have unreliable sources, and therefore there will be fake news, etc. And people will believe in that. Yes, we agree on that, and I will elaborate on that more when I will rebut the opening government. So let's start with the opening government. So their main case is that there will be pressure on the victim, and therefore victims give up their investigations, and there will be victim blaming, etc. Opening opposition rebuts this in this way. People will anyway know that allegation happened because there is something weird happening, that Kevin Spacey is somehow not appearing in series, and etc. We offer you systematic rebut. Firstly, what is the uniqueness of ongoing reporting ongoing trials? Opening government doesn't explain that. Conservative people or people who want to blame the victim will be blaming them anyway, even after trial ends, even after they know about this instance. So the problem is that their problem is that there is no logical explanation why ongoing trials are a unique mechanism to blame the victim, why at this time it is the most effective. we say that it is more likely to happen on both sides. Secondly, their assumption is that public response will be homogeneously bad. No, that's not true, because media, like especially progressive media, has also interest in constant shaming and constantly shaming of famous guys such as Kaizen, etc. And in the vast majority of cases, they exaggerate on that because they attract the most attention. When you say that some like popular guy, I don't know, Weinstein, who was like very dominant figure who was very liked by the population or by lots of people, and now this good guy is now doing bad things, and in that case it creates attention, and therefore liberal progressive media will also talk about that, and therefore their assumption is that all responses will be bad, all conservative media talk about these things, all conservative media will blame the victim, etc. Doesn't work. So when they say that no, we will have like liberal media and etc., there will be counter pressure and etc. Okay, if both media platforms, like i.e. both liberal and conservative media platforms, will talk about this, but in that case, they don't explain why conservative pressure from conservative media is more persuasive than the liberal. They have to explain this logical explanation. So even if we have like balance of public response, that is, say some people are being supportive of the victim, and on the other hand, some people are shaming the victim. Why is that important on our case, right? Alternatively, you lose these crucial benefits coming from this public response. That is, say, firstly, you have support. That's it. Public mostly talk about things like your braveness. They will shame on the raper and rapist, etc. And in that case, it encourages the victim to keep on the trial and etc. But alternatively, she will anyway face the pressure from their close people, maybe. Anyway, she will question the guiltiness of your case and of your criminal, etc. So in that case, we say that you lose this unique benefit of incentivizing this victim to go on the trial. Because now she will be hearing this lots of public response from, for example, liberal media, etc., that she was so brave, and they'll attack on Brett Kavanaugh, etc., and they'll try to find some previous precedences of this case happening, and they'll try to find some new evidences. In that case, I, as a victim, somehow try to rethink my position. That maybe he is really guilty, and I should be standing my ground. And in that case, this is a unique benefit that is not happening on their side. But secondly, this also sets a precedent to report from other women, right? Women who were raped by these famous individuals, but they are too afraid of that. When there is ongoing report on ongoing trials, this creates such a big hype. For example, in the case of Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and etc. In that case, women try to listening this comments from liberal media, etc., that she was so brave and etc. They also try to go stand up and report their case. Why is it uniquely important? Is because more hype will encourage the more investigation, will encourage the more public hype. Before that, okay.
Social impact CEO is talking about is not unique. Me Too movement has a lot of power. They are empowering and stuff like that. Even this scandal is better when reported afterwards. In case of win multiple interviews, still empowerment to report. In case of lose, there are much less attacks than in their case.
Yeah, that's the problem. You already said on your case that the case is most likely to fail. You already said that this guilty person have lots of power, and therefore the guilty victim is most likely to fail. In which means that people are not interested in one failed case. What they will do is that when they hear this instance, they will just say, "Oh, that's what was expected. She was just exaggerating, and Brett Kavanaugh, for example, was not guilty." And therefore, what impact does that give? Is that no hype there will be, and therefore people not in the media will not talk about it, and therefore your argument is involved. So, but thirdly, let's take the best case of opening up the government. So that's there is a pressure from public, and that's harmful for the victim, right? They need to prove why this pressure from public is so harmful. Because we're talking that victim anyway will face pressure from their close people, because they may say they don't trust on them, so they'll blame them anyway. They need to prove why the pressure coming from this conservative media, etc., will be so decisive, right? Let's make comparison. So what they say is that victim is harmed because of public pressure. We're saying that there will be hype, and therefore more coverage will trigger more attention, and more victims will speak up, and further it will cause deterrence, like at least marginal deterrence, right? If it's not like we agree that it will not be so decisive, but there will be some effect in any way, right? But in that case, if you compare on the probability, the argument is dependent on the assumption first why these comments are always bad, but secondly why these bad comments will always dominate over the good ones. But we're saying that we don't assume that all comments will be good and supportive, but we're talking about realistic cases, this balance of power this will not happen on their side. We're proud to show.
I thank the speaker and all other debaters one more time for this round. Please shake your hands and leave the room.